Jonah had always been devout, his life tethered to the teachings of the elders of the depths, was rooted in the core belief that beneath the surface of the world, older beings stirred. Their sacred texts, written in jagged script on ancient vellum, spoke of creatures forgotten by time, gods who had existed before humanity had dreamed of gods at all. The Great One slumbered, they said, imprisoned in the murky depths of reality, waiting for the day it could rise again and consume all of creations. Jonah's faith was unwavering. From the time he could speak, he was taught the chants. Their strange guttural sounds filled the dark halls of the cathedral, reverberating off cold stone walls damp with the condensation of the underground. The elders, clothed in flowing robes of ash and soot, led the ceremonies with a reverence that sent shivers down his spine. They whispered at a time when the boundaries between this world and the world of the elders would finally be torn apart. Jonah, like the others, longed for this day. The ceremonies grew darker, as did Jonah's devotion. The rituals required blood, not merely symbolic blood, but real, pulsing life. Livestock at first. Jonah remembered how he hesitated the first time he was ordered to cut the throat of a goat, but the elders' voices had been soothing, reassuring him that this was a small offering compared to what they would ask of him later. After the first spill of crimson against the blackened altar, it became easier. They called the Great One Engarlith, the devourer of stars, and promised that its hunger would end suffering, for in oblivion nothing suffered. Over time, they escalated. Jonah found himself part of the midnight rites where they summoned strange, roiling shadows from the earth. The air would grow thick, choked with the stench of rot and brine, and the elders would offer praise to these apparitions. Spiteful, malevolent things that slithered along the ground and whispered lies in forgotten languages. Jonah embraced their presence with fervor. These were messengers of Engarlith, he was told, small reflections of the devourer itself. It wasn't long before the cult's reach extended beyond willing acolytes. Outsiders were taken. The elders said they were chosen by the Great One, marked for sacrifice. Jonah, with trembling hands and heart, helped bind them to the altar. He recited the invocations as the blade descended, eyes wide with faith and horror. They screamed, but the elders assured him that this suffering was necessary. Each death opened a rift, and each rift brought them closer to the devourer. The underground cathedral was decorated with grotesque symbols, painted in ash and blood, etched into the stone itself. Foul-smelling incense burned constantly, filling the air with a heady mixture of decay and something far worse. Something Jonah couldn't identify, but could always taste at the back of his throat. In the darkness, the elders recited long-forgotten prayers to Engarlith. They believed they were on the brink of revelation. So did Jonah. Years of rituals and sacrifices led to this moment. The elders had prepared for weeks, carving intricate sigils into the stone floor, painting the altar with a mixture of blood, bone dust, and something Jonah could only describe as liquefied nightmare. The chosen, bound and gagged, lay trembling before them. The ceremony was the culmination of decades of work. Jonah had been chosen to perform the final cut, the act that would rend reality and summon Ingarlith. As he raised the blade, the elders began their chant, low and guttural, their voices merging into a single unholy sound that seemed to crawl into Jonah's mind. He hesitated for a moment, feeling the weight of what he was about to do. But then he steeled himself, for this was the moment he had dreamed of, when the Great One would rise, when the world would end, and he would be among the blessed who had seen the true face of existence. The knife came down, the rift opened. Jonah felt it before he saw it, a pulse like the heartbeat of the earth itself, and then the very air around him seemed to tear apart. The dark cathedral, once filled with shadows and despair, was flooded with a blinding light. Jonah shielded his eyes, his heart hammering in his chest. This wasn't the creeping, malevolent presence he had expected. The light was pure, overwhelming, filling every corner of the space with warmth and power. And then it appeared. Not Engarlith, not the devourer of stars, but something else, something radiant. It stood in the center of the rift, wings unfurling in a blaze of shimmering gold. Its form was too bright, too perfect for Jonah to comprehend. He fell to his knees, choking on his own breath. The elders screamed. Some ran, others clawed at their eyes, unable to bear the sight of the being before them. But Jonah couldn't move. He was frozen in place, staring up in awe at the angel that had stepped through the void. This was not the malevolent god they had sought to summon. This was something far older, far more powerful. It was no creature from the depths, but a creature of light and judgment. Its gaze swept over the room, and Jonah felt every sin he had ever committed laid bare. The sacrifices, the rituals, the blood. They were nothing now, a mockery of true power. He had been so wrong. They all had. The angel spoke, its voice like thunder and light. You have called upon the void, but the void does not answer to you. I am the herald of judgment, and you shall be weighed. Jonah wept. He had devoted his life to the wrong god, the wrong path. The angel's presence was both terrifying and magnificent. It was not a god of destruction, but of balance and of judgment. He could feel the weight of his deeds crushing him, suffocating him beneath the gaze of something so far beyond his understanding that it hurt to even exist in its presence. The light grew brighter, and Jonah felt himself unraveling, piece by piece. His body, his mind, his soul was all coming apart in the face of the angel's radiance. He screamed, but there was no sound, only the endless, brilliant light. And as he faded into nothingness, he realized that true power, true divinity, was not something to be summoned or controlled. It was something that consumed all who dared to touch it.